Okay, we got those. Okay, the recording is started. We got those heart reacts going already. Hey, folks, feel free to go ahead and say hello in the chat. Make sure you're chatting with everyone rather than just hosts and panelists. If you check your little blue drop-down menu, looks like we're coming up on 1,600 folks on the call so far. We'll just give it a minute for everyone to arrive, and then we will go ahead and get started. Okay, I mean, I could not rattle off these names and locations in the chat at the speed they're going if I tried, but we've got folks from all across the country. Hello to the folks specifically from my hometown of Chicago, Illinois. Much love to Chicago in the chat, as well as all the other places in the country where folks are calling in from. My name is Nora. I'm going to be your host and MC for the night. We will get started shortly. I'm going to give a quick pro tip. If you are using the chat function tonight, check that little blue drop-down menu. Right now, it might say you're chatting to everyone. If it does, that's great. But it might say you're just chatting to hosts and panelists. So if you'd like your message to be seen by everyone, go ahead and change that drop-down to everyone. And then you'll be saying hello to all of the 1,900 people who are on this call right now, which is amazing. We're going to give it just another minute for folks to arrive, and then we'll get started. Okay, and welcome to folks who have just joined in the past minute or two. So happy to have you at this 1 Million Rising updates and next steps and transition call. I think that the arrivals have been slowing down a little bit, so I am going to go ahead and get us started here. So, Carly, if the music is still playing in the back end at all, you can turn it off. And yeah, thank you for changing the slides there. So, hey, everybody, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Like I said just a moment ago, my name is Nora. I work at Indivisible, and I'm going to be your host and your MC for the night. We'll also bring on a couple of other colleagues in a little bit. And just for some quick housekeeping, yeah, I want to say welcome back. I assume that the vast majority of you all are here because you took part in some way in the 1 Million Rising program that took place over the summer and early fall, whether you attended trainings, maybe you hosted a gathering, maybe you attended a gathering. Yeah, this is a call tonight to share some updates and next steps coming out of that program and looking ahead to what's next. If you are just kind of catching up or joining us for the first time, we do still have all past materials and recordings up at nokings.org/rise. We can drop that link in the chat in just a second. We are recording tonight. You probably got that notification. And yes, we will always send out materials after the call, and they'll be posted online as well. And then just a couple of things about our Zoom space tonight. So the chat, as you may be able to tell, is open at the moment. We'll pause it sometimes, especially to drop links. Also, if just we're feeling like we want to slow down the chat a little bit so folks can focus on what is being said by the presenters, we might pause it at those moments. And also, folks, there's trolls in spaces sometimes these days. If you notice anything like that, don't worry, our backend team is keeping a lookout, and we'll handle it. So let's keep the chat as positive and constructive as we can. So I think with that, yeah, let me go to the agenda here. So as I kind of said at the top, we're going to start with just a little bit of recap and context and reflection on the 1 Million Rising program, what happened with the trainings, the gatherings that took place, some of the results so far from the Signs of Solidarity and Ground of Velo campaigns, a little bit of touch on local work that's been in progress around those. I also am just going to speak a little bit to kind of what 1 Million Rising came out of and where it's headed next. Speaking of what's happening next, we want to give some updates on both the upcoming No Kings Day of Action, as well as other ways for folks to be staying plugged in outside of these major mobilization days. Then, kind of along the way, and then after that, our action focus for tonight is a new kind of organizing container that's being launched called Courage Collectives. I'm going to pass the mic to my colleague Trisha for that section, as well as for an earlier section. And then our training focus for tonight is going to be kind of micro training on the basics of campaign planning. We do have a little bit of time saved at the end for Q&A. So just to speak a little bit to how that's going to work, We'll be watching the chat for general thoughts, vibes, that kind of thing, except for those moments when we pause it. We are also using the Q&A function. The way it's going to work tonight is our team will track that for sort of simpler or more straightforward questions along the way and send answers there. But then overall, because we've got about, yeah, it looks like we're at almost 2,400 people on the call right now. We'll be using that Q&A section to sort of just pull the most common things that are coming up in the space and speak to those as a group at the end, those of us who are facilitating. I think that's what I wanted to say on that piece. So I think we can go to the next slide here. Yeah, thank you to my backend team handling the slides. So yeah, let's just zoom back a little bit to June 2025. I know it probably seems like yesterday and years ago at the same time when the first No Kings demonstration happened on June 14th. That was a really powerful day. 5 million people in the streets, one of the largest mobilizations in American history. And this program came out of that. It was an effort to say so much energy and power and people were present on that day, but we know, and you all might remember the 3.5% rule that we talked about in this training series in the past, as well as, if you've heard about it in other places, we know that we can't just be having individual days of action. They're really powerful, they're really necessary, but we need that sustained action over time. And so this program, training huge numbers of people on strategic non-cooperation strategies, was a way to say, we've got to build this movement over time and give people more tactics and tools and a theory of change for how we can work in this moment. And you all might remember, I just want to shout out again, Ashley Woodard Henderson, Daniel Hunter, Maria Steffen, other folks from the Freedom Trainers team who held down those trainings earlier on. You may remember, I feel like it was Ash in particular who at one point talked about the relationship between tactics, these big days, the work that goes on in between, movement and base building, all of that. And now we're looking at going back to one of those big days. I really, really hope that a lot of you all are already signed up for your local No Kings event or planning to attend, telling your friends and family about it. Don't worry, I will remind you later if you're not yet. But this is kind of all part of trying to weave together the strongest civil resistance movement that we can, that we so desperately need in this moment. A little bit more of kind of just pulling back the curtain here. So all of these efforts have been coalition efforts. There's so many organizations, national, local, autonomous, that are coming together to do really good work right now. And I mentioned earlier, I work at Indivisible, right? So Indivisible is one of the organizations that has participated in different ways in these moments. When we were coming out of the last No Kings, the idea to train a lot of folks on non-cooperation was something that Indivisible had the kind of capacity and the infrastructure to be able to take on. So many of our other movement partners were doing different pieces. If folks remember, like Good Trouble Lives On with the Transformative Justice Coalition and their partners, maybe you showed up for like the Medicaid and Medicare, Families First action that I believe Move On and some of their folks did. Our labor folks were holding down Labor Day. So different pieces of the movement take different pieces. This program was one thing that, as part of a coalition, Indivisible partly housed. So I bring that up just to say, I think a lot of you all might be from Indivisible or you maybe heard about its work in other ways. And tonight, part of what we're going to be offering in terms of next pathways to plug in is via that Indivisible infrastructure. We'll give a little bit more context about it later on, but yeah, I just wanted to share some of that bigger picture context or recap it if it was something that had shown up in your awareness in different ways earlier on. Just to talk about, yeah, where we come from, where we're going, and the fact that we do have this really big next day that we got to get back out in the streets, as well as keep building our political homes in different ways beyond that. Okay, I think that covers it for this. Carla, if you want to take me to the next slide. So, folks, we reported on some basics of these numbers at the last 1 million Rising call in August, but we've got some updates for you because folks kept working. Our numbers show right now that over 300,000 people took in this training on strategic non-cooperation and resisting authoritarianism through, what we have to go on is YouTube views. Probably some of those are not real people that didn't watch all the way through, but still, we're talking probably one of the largest non-cooperation training experiences in human history. And, it's just been really incredible and really exciting that folks have shown up for that. And more importantly, that you've spread the word. And so I'm assuming again that many, many of you, and please say in the chat if this is the case for you, held over 2,100 of these community resistance gatherings in your communities in 49 states and DC. I know a lot of folks are still meeting right now, whether you're formally on Mobilize or not. People are still gathering, people are still talking. If you're in your head doing the math and you're like, that doesn't quite sound like 1 million, don't worry. We really trust that there are ripple effects in this. 1 million was an exciting number to shoot for, and we trust that we're building that over time, even if we don't quite have that on the YouTube views yet. And more importantly than even the numbers has been the testimony. So thank you so much to those of you all who filled out the feedback forms and the survey forms about how your gatherings went, what you felt about these trainings. It was really, really incredible to just, yeah, hear some of that testimony of what it meant to come together in your communities during this time. So we can go to the next slide. I actually just want to share a little bit of some themes we heard from you all around that. One thing, yeah, just like a lot of great stories, a lot of new ideas. Frankly, so much that was coming into the inbox that it posed questions for us around like how can we connect y'all together to kind of keep sharing ideas, and not have to go through, one individual Zoom or one individual screen moment in order to do that. There's one piece of what we're offering later that we'll speak to that a little bit. Folks expressed just great value in being able to come together to build community, to get other folks in their community on board with taking action with this framework around strategic non-cooperation. All of that was really incredible to hear. If you keep going to the next bullet point, thank you, Carly. A couple other things kind of in like learning space for those of us who were helping with some of the curriculum and the back end and the programmatic pieces. We definitely heard like a lot of eagerness from folks around wanting to know like what's next, or like how can I take action? How can I apply this locally? Like this is a great idea, but what do I actually do? All of that kind of energy. And that is very much heard. We put as much of what we could into some of the calls to action and campaigns that came out of the third thing, but just wanted to reflect. I think there's a lot of meaning in that eagerness, and it was great to hear from folks. And yes, definitely heard, some challenges around like materials, either the toolkit was too much or wasn't enough, or Mobilize and all these platforms have their challenges along the way. Some timeline questions. Some folks felt like it was enough time to gather. Some folks felt like this is too much time. We need to get back into the streets. So I think a spirit that like I'll at least speak for myself, but a lot of, like our collaborators at Freedom Trainers, and I think a lot of other folks in different movement space try to keep in mind is that organizing is really a learning process. And especially when things are so urgent and there's so much harm we're trying to mitigate and prevent right now, that trying things, seeing what we learn, being open and sharing with each other about like what's working, what we might want to do differently next time, if or when there is a next time, all of that is really valuable. So just want to say thank you all to you for writing with us on this program, sharing your notes and your feedback, and more importantly, just like taking it actually into your communities and not just here on this Zoom screen, 300,000 people or no. So we can go to the next slide here. Next, I just want to share out a little bit about some of our calls to action and how they win our campaigns. And actually, for that, Trisha, can I pass the mic over to you for the Signs of Solidarity update?
Yeah, thank you so much, Nora. Hi, everyone. I'm Trisha Maharaj. I'm the Associate Policy Director here at Indivisible, and I'm here to give this update on Signs of Solidarity. We launched this campaign back in August, and the ask was to canvass local businesses in your community with two different ways that they can stand up to ICE and their escalating violence. The first ask is to protect employees from ICE by posting an employees only sign to create a designated private area for workers that ICE cannot legally enter without a signed judicial warrant. Now, of course, we know that signs can't guarantee that ICE agents will actually follow the law, but they do raise the barrier to entry and they open up more legal remedies for workers if and when ICE does violate that law during a raid. The second ask is to post public-facing signs that express opposition to ICE and support for immigrant families. These signs are really just meant to be highly visible and seen by as many people as possible because they let people know that defiance is everywhere and that there are others in their community that oppose authoritarianism, which can embolden them to can take action themselves because they know that they're not alone. So, since August, we've had more than 12,000 people sign up to canvass their local businesses. And from there, we've had about 1,000 folks who filled out the report back form to let us know how that's going. This isn't a surprising number. Sometimes it's a little hard to get data back on tactics like this, but they've reported back that more than 3,500 businesses have created protected spaces for their employees, and more than 6,000 have put up public signs stating their opposition to ICE. And we've been hearing a lot of success stories from the more red and rural Piedmont, Virginia, to the more blue and urban Portland, Oregon. And so many of us I know, including myself, have seen our No Kings, No Ice signs out in the wild, just like when we've been going about our days. And it's always just made me so happy to see. It's a reminder that there are other people that feel the same way that I do and that they're taking action. And so we've learned a lot from these report backs, including some tips and tricks that folks have found helpful, including going canvassing in pairs because it can feel less intimidating if you go with a friend. starting with businesses that are easy asks. So, coffee shops and independent bookstores that might already have similar messaging posted, because some businesses will be more inclined to post a public sign if you can point to a business that's already have that sign up. So, if there's other people in the neighborhood doing it, they might be more emboldened to do it as well. And then practice pushing back when businesses don't want to post a sign because it's too political or because they don't want to upset customers. We know that it can be uncomfortable or even scary to push back, but a good way to work through that discomfort is to role play with a friend or a family member, or even just in the mirror. Having a practice with what to say can make you feel more confident in the moment. And I just want to remind us that to successfully build and scale the movement against Trump's authoritarian power grab, we need to bring businesses like this to our side. It might seem small, but it really is so important that they publicly express opposition to ICE and their violent militarized raids because it spreads this message in our community and it really does help others find the courage to stand up against authoritarianism. But to get there, we're going to all have to get comfortable being a little bit more uncomfortable. And we can go to the next slide. And which is, I just want to share this quote from a report back that we got that really captures that idea. I was so nervous, but it got easier. I kept saying to myself that the part of me that wants to show up to support immigrants in my community is who I want to show up, more than the scared part. If you're nervous about canvassing or pushing back on a reluctant business, you're not the only one. But as this volunteer can attest, it gets easier the more you try it, and it can be really rewarding to push past that discomfort to take a stand for our immigrant neighbors. Signs of Solidarity is still going, so if you haven't already gotten out to canvas in your community, now's your chance, and don't forget to fill out that report back form after so that we can keep learning from all of your experiences. And I'll pass it back to Nora to talk about our next campaign.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Trisha. And oh wait, I gotta switch our little spotlights here. There we go. And folks, I just did pause the chat real quick to drop the sign up form for Signs of Solidarity. So if you're feeling inspired by what you just heard, and you want to still, it's definitely not too late to do it. I feel like somebody just said in the chat, like, sadly, I haven't seen any of these signs in my community. Hey, you could be the one to put them there. This program is still live. If you fill out that form, you'll get a link to all the signage that you can print out, a little toolkit that helps walk through how to do these visits and have these conversations. We've done our best to kind of make it as accessible and impactful as possible. So yeah, it's not too late. Go ahead and grab that link that is in the chat now. Don't worry, we'll send in the follow-up email too. So I am going to pop the chat back on now. The next thing we want to share a little bit about is the Ground to Velo campaign. So this is one of the other kind of campaign calls to actions that came out of the last 1 Million Rising call in August, which is about, and just for, again, anybody who might be new, this is about the Ground to Velo campaign to pressure Avelo Airlines to end its deportation contract with ICE and to never profit from deportation again. So over the summer, kind of coming out of 1 Million Rising and otherwise, nearly 10,000 people took what we called the Ground to Velo pledge, committing to, in different ways, put pressure on Avelo Airlines to end its deportation contract. And, sometimes we can't always track the specifics of these things, but what we can tell you is that the Ground to Velo website and campaign materials have gotten over 100,000 views from folks. So that is helping, thousands of people across the country get information and be able to plug into actually taking action. So at this point, what we're sensing is that what started as kind of a rapid on-ramp and a way for people to turn their outrage into action has really become a broad and decentralized movement. There's been at least 49 separate local events that have taken place since it launched. And I do just want to say, like, Indivisible and 1 Million Rising is just one small piece of organizing that's connected to a larger national ecosystem. So folks at Siempre and Si, Mi Gente, the Stop Avelo Coalition, there's a lot of different folks who have been focusing on Avelo in different ways. So we're excited to be kind of contributing to that through what came out of this. I want to give a special shout out and spotlight Atlanta and Baltimore. In Atlanta, organizers held one of the largest protests we've seen yet around Ground to Velo. It was outside the Hartsfield Airport and on a nearby overpass. That's what the photo on this slide shows. Brought a lot of local awareness to Avelo's ICE contract, social media content that went viral. And then in Baltimore, hundreds of people turned out at BWI Airport to demand that Maryland stop enabling deportation flights through Avelo. And that protest made the evening news, put a lot of pressure on local state officials, got some really great coverage. And we do have other signs that all of this is working. There are several universities that have confirmed that their partnerships with Avelo have ended. We're continuing to encourage them to go public, make a statement about that, make clear that they won't do business with deportation profiteers. And also we're seeing signs that city councils and local governments have begun asking questions about why their public dollars are flowing to a company that's running ICE flights. So yeah, we're sensing overall that the Ground of Velo campaign is proving what's possible, and we kind of link the local non-cooperation to a national strategy. These things that can take place at airports or with specific colleges and universities, municipalities can make a national feeling that, there's real pressure on a corporation that's complicit in state violence, and showing that everyday people can take direct action to disrupt that. So we are going to be keeping this campaign going. The next phase is going to be about coordinating with partners who are engaged in this work, trying to sustain and escalate it, and kind of move from the on-ramp phase into deeper organizing with folks based on their pillar identities, which we'll come back to in just a little bit, trying to identify where we have leverage. Again, working with coalition partners to decide where and how we can make the next push most effective. But we really, really just want to recognize this community's impact, the work that came out of the non-cooperation training in 1 Million Rising, just thousands of people mobilized, probably many of you who are in this call, dozens of local actions, all of these kind of growing cracks in Avelo's legitimacy are coming through. And just to say to that too, I know people were sharing their stories of signs of solidarity work. If any of you took action for the Ground Avelo campaign and you want to chime in the chat about that right now, it'd be really great to hear about any of that work that's happened. And folks, please keep tracking the chat along the way so that we can hear about it. And I believe, thank you, Liz, for dropping that link one more time. I'll pause the chat for a second so that uh, yes, so that we can drop that link if folks want to grab it. There we go. And I'm just going to answer a real quick question that I see in the chat when looking at it. How do I watch the non-cooperation training now? You can go to nokings.org/rise, and we can drop that chat again if you want to catch up on the trainings over the summer. Okay, I think we can keep it moving from here into talking about, what's next and how to be staying involved and plugged in going forward from this. Folks, you are not going to be surprised to hear me say that one of the things we all need to do, I need to do it, you need to do it, my colleagues on this call need to do it. I need to talk to my barber. I need to talk to my landlord. I need to talk to my friends and my family and all of them and say, please show up to No Kings on October 18th. If you don't know where your local No Kings event is, we can drop the link to the map in the chat right now. That's a great link to be sharing with those friends and family and people in your community. If they want to, you can find the direct link to where it is in your town or your city, or, send it to your friends and family across the country for them to find the local one in their own community. We got to show up for No Kings. And I just want to say, yes, we'd all like to see that number be higher than it was in June. We'd all like to set a record, but that's just not about the numbers. It's not just because hitting 6 million would be cool. It's because we need to show growing, visible defiance and resistance to authoritarianism and insisting on protecting people in this country. Okay. And this is one opportunity that we have to do that. Okay, but we were talking about the big days of action, the work in between. Another piece of this puzzle is that we imagine a lot of you all are probably looking for a longer term political home. So I mentioned earlier, those of us who are holding down this particular call tonight work at Indivisible, so we're speaking to that especially. But just to say, there's a lot of great organizations that are out there, both local and national. And the ways that you might choose to plug in, we celebrate and uplift all of those. If you're looking for a longer term political home and Indivisible feels like it could be right for you, we just dropped a link in the chat. Joining a local Indivisible group is a really great option. So there's, I think, thousands is the correct number, the correct broad number of local Indivisible groups across the country who are both autonomous local networks of folks who have been, advocating for justice in the past and resisting this administration in the first round and now in the second round, who also are coordinated around national moments of strategic action taking, such as No Kings, and otherwise. You can also start your own Indivisible group. If there's not one in your area, we definitely encourage you to check out pre-existing ones, but if there's not one in your area already, thank you, Tom, for the exact number. We also have the link in the chat to start your own. And then something that kind of weaves inside all of these, but also ties back to the 1 Million Rising program. We'll pull up a familiar image for some of you all in just a second. But if you are excited about organizing within your pillar, we're launching a program called Courage Collectives. And I am once again going to pass the mic over to Trisha to talk a little bit about what that's all about. Trisha, you back with us?
Yeah, thanks much. I'm so excited to share more about this new program with everyone. So to set the scene, Carly, do you mind if we go to the next slide? Thanks so much. Okay. So yeah, to set the scene a little bit, let's just do a quick recap of the first 1 million Rising call. These are the pillars of support, which are the organizations and institutions in society that can provide the administration with the power they need to implement policies and wield control. When those pillars support a regime, or even if they just stay silent and go along with it, they give the regime and its leaders power and legitimacy. And when they refuse to cooperate with that regime, they can erode its power. So, to fight back against the authoritarian Trump regime, we need to have all of these pillars engaging in non cooperation as often as possible. And as a movement, we all identify with different pillars, and even within those identities, we relate to the pillars in different ways. So, for example, I'm sure there are a lot of people on this call who all belong to a professional association. That might all fall within one pillar, but can look very different depending on what your profession actually is. Or you might all fit into an education pillar, but your role can really vary if you're a teacher versus a school administrator versus a student or a parent of school age kids. What that means is that there are almost endless ways that we can all be engaging in pillar advocacy, and many of those are ways that are unique to our own experience and context. And that's where Courage Collectives come in. We are launching the Courage Collectives program to create space for all of you to engage in targeted pillar work that makes the most sense for you and your pillar identities. Carly, next slide, please. Okay, so Courage Collectives are organizing groups that you can form with other folks that share your pillar identity to push the organizations and institutions within that pillar to refuse to go along with the Trump administration's authoritarian actions. This is where you have the opportunity to do more specific and tailored pillar work that you, as a member of the pillar, are best suited for, where your own identity, experience, and expertise are going to be essential for that advocacy. We're going to continue to have broad national campaigns and calls to action related to the various pillars that anyone can engage in. So, like Ground of Velo, like Signs of Solidarity. But this is really where you get to engage in more niche advocacy that wouldn't necessarily work for a national campaign. And when we all engage in these specific ways, we're able to take exponentially more action. Thus, we're having more impact, and we can target so many more institutions and organizations than we could if we had to develop those broad national campaigns for each one. This is how we grow and scale our movement to meet this moment of authoritarian breakthrough. We can go to the next slide. So, anyone who fits into a pillar of support can form a Courage Collective. So, truly, they are for anyone that's interested. And you don't need much to start, just an idea of the pillar you want to focus on, and 2 to 3 people that you know that share that pillar identity and want to join you to take action in that pillar. And like I said, there are really these endless ways that your Courage Collective can engage in this advocacy because there aren't a set number of pillars, and there are so many ways that the pillars relate to each other. So I imagine that there's going to be a lot of variety in who makes up each collective and what they're working on. There's not going to be one thing that everyone's working on at the same time, and that's the point. And then it's likely that some groups are going to be all virtual with members who are spread out across the country, but then some may have members that are all in the same place and can organize in person. There is no one size fits all structure here. And you truly get to decide what your advocacy looks like. You are the expert on how to push the organizations and institutions within your pillar to stand up to Trump. So Courage Collectives are meant to be self-directed and DIY. You're setting your own goals, you're planning and driving the campaigns, and deciding what tactics make the most sense for your on your own. Indivisible is here to help make your Courage Collective a success. Each registered Courage Collective group gets dedicated support from Indivisible staff. We're available to answer questions and offer guidance on strategy and organizing for developing and executing different actions. We're also going to offer programming with trainings on different organizing skills and opportunities for different Courage Collectives, all working within the same pillar to connect, collaborate, and learn from each other. And we'll have some dedicated funding for each Courage Collective for some of the costs they might incur in the course of their advocacy. There'll be a reimbursement program that each group has access to, and we'll have more details coming soon for all those registered collectives. And just a note on how these collectives might interact with an indivisible group, because I know that quite a few of you on this call are already members or leaders of an indivisible group and are now thinking about whether or not you want to start a Courage Collective as well. If the members of your indivisible group all share a pillar identity and want to engage in pillar specific work together, registering a Courage Collective that functions as a working group of your group could be a really good option. But you may want your Courage Collective to be a separate endeavor if there's no real overlap between your indivisible group and the pillar identity that you're focused on for your collective, especially if you anticipate that collective members will also be spread out across the country. And then, of course, anyone can form their own Courage Collective, whether or not they're currently in an indivisible group. This is a new thing that is open to anyone that is interested in doing pillars related advocacy. So we can go to the next slide. I thought it might be helpful to hear some different options of what a Courage Collective could be. But since we're launching this program like right here and now, I don't actually have real examples to share with you yet, but I have a couple of hypothetical ones I thought could be useful for us to consider. So maybe you're a group of friends who all went to law school together that form a collective because you want to push the American Bar Association or other legal professional associations to issue statements condemning Trump every time he does something that erodes the rule of law. Or maybe you're members of the same church that form a collective to push your church and your parish to be a sanctuary church that protects your immigrant neighbors. Or you could maybe be a group of veterans who come together to form a collective to speak out against the administration's changes to the rules and standards of the military and to bring more veterans to our side. And so you might be hearing all of this and it's sparking something for you. You might already see an opportunity within your pillar, or you have an idea for a campaign that you would want to run. Maybe you already know some folks that share your identity that you would want to organize with. That's great. Those are all really great reasons to start your own Courage Collective. But it's not necessary for you to have any of that figured out yet. You can just be really passionate about your own pillar identity and want to leverage that identity in the fight against Trump and his authoritarian regime. That's just as great of a reason to start a Courage Collective. So we can go to the next slide. And so I do want to emphasize that Courage Collectives are really an opportunity for you to take the lead in the fight against Trump and against fascism, and to not have to wait for Indivisible or any other national organization to tell you exactly what to do. You get to help build the movement and drive action too. Because we're in a period of authoritarian breakthrough, and we're trying to build a big enough backlash to stop it before Trump can consolidate too much power and break too many of our democratic institutions. It's a moment that requires all of us to step up where we can and do as much as we can to bring more people to our side and to engage in non-cooperation and defiance of the administration. So I recognize that this is a big ask, and that might mean that forming a Courage Collective isn't the right move for everyone, but I really want to encourage you to consider if it's the right move for you, even if it sounds a little bit scary or like it might be a little hard. Because that's how a lot of people feel when they start an indivisible group too. But then they take this big leap, and it turns out that so many of those folks have been successful group leaders since 2017. Because we can do hard things, and we're going to need to do hard things if we want to defeat Trump, and Indivisible really is here to help. So, if you're ready to start your own Courage Collective, you can register at the link that they're going to be dropping in the chat. Please only use this link to register a Courage Collective if you're like ready to go and start that group. Once you sign up, you're going to get an email with some initial information and resources, and we'll reach out to have a quick conversation about your group and how we can help support you. And then your first step can be to gather those pillar buddies and attend a No Kings rally together. Um, but if you're not quite ready to form your own group yet, but you're interested in doing more targeted pillar work, we would also love to hear from you and learn more about which pillars you're most likely to engage with, because that helps us continue to build out our program and develop campaigns with all of that information in mind. So you can fill out our interest form that's also going to be dropped in the chat for you, and we'll keep you posted on new ways to take action. And then if you want to learn more about Courage Collectives and then find the registration link later, you can check it out on our website. We're dropping that link for you as well. Thank you to my amazing colleagues for dropping all of the links. Um, and now I'm going to throw it over to one of my other brilliant colleagues, Tom, who's going to give you a taste of what sort of support and training Indivisible offers for Courage Collectives and walk you through how to plan your own campaign.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much, Trisha. Hello, everyone. My name is Tom. I use he, him pronouns, and I live in Seattle. I am going to do my absolute best to speak slowly tonight, but that is not my natural cadence, so I'll rely on my colleagues to tell me to slow it down a bit if I'm going too fast. But I am going to just let you all know that I'm so grateful to be here with you this evening. The work of 1 Million Rising and of the Courage Collectives is so important, and I am so grateful to be in this fight with all y'all. I also want to say that I really respect and value my friends and colleagues on this call. So when I say next slide, please know that the please and thank you are implied. I want to start by framing why it is that we're actually talking about campaign planning tonight. As Trisha just mentioned, our Courage collectives are going to be a little bit more DIY than some of the other programs at Indivisible that we've offered in the past. And we've really seen that campaign plans are a super critical tool to make sure that folks are able to reach the goals that they want to achieve. So the framework we're going to walk through tonight is designed to give you some really practical tools to help your collective be as successful as possible in moving the needle. We are all here tonight because we want to make sure that our democracy not only survives, but it thrives. And campaigns are the engine that turn our values and vision into action. A strong campaign gives us three things. It gives us a clear target, it gives us a theory of change, and it gives us milestones to keep us moving forward. I'll say that again. So a campaign plan helps us with three things. It helps us identify a clear target, a theory of change, and the milestones that will keep us moving forward. So tonight we're going to walk you through a super simple 5-question framework that you can design your campaigns on in your Courage collectives. Can we jump to the next slide, please? Awesome. Okay, so here are our 5 questions that we want you to wrestle with as you're launching your Courage collective. So, question number 1. What is the problem that we're trying to solve? You want to keep it super specific and connected to your pillar. The more narrow and more concentrated your problem is, the easier it is to build a campaign around it. So ask yourself, how does this problem connect to our pillar, and why does it matter now? If your problem is way too broad, it's going to be hard to keep those decision makers accountable. Super clear problem statements make it easier to communicate with your base and to communicate with the public. You want people outside of your collective to hear your problem and instantly understand why it matters and why it is so urgent. So I'm going to use an example here around folks that are members of a college or a university alumni group. So university trustees are actively considering dismantling diversity, equity, and inclusion programs to comply with Trump's proposed federal policy. This decision directly threatens students, faculty, and staff who rely on these programs for support, for representation, and it undermines the university's commitment to equity. So, in those 2 sentences, we've named our problem. We've talked about what's wrong, why it's wrong, and why we've got to act now. Once you've figured out your problem, let's set a goal. You've got to define the thing that you want to see changed. I know some folks on the call are talking about like SMART goals. We've talked about those in the past. SMART goals are specific, they're measurable, they're achievable, they're relevant, and they're time bound. This is not about solving everything at once. It's about what is our next winnable step. Our goals are rallying cries that folks can unite around. These should be bold enough to inspire people, but realistic enough to actually be achievable. A good campaign goal shows your progress towards our bigger vision, and it creates the momentum for that fight. So in this scenario around the university, our example here is we want to push the university to publicly commit to funding and protecting existing DEI programs. So we've named our problem. Now we've set our goal. Our goal is to push the university to publicly commit to funding and protecting existing DEI programs. The next thing we need to focus on is who actually has the power to make this change? Who is the decision maker here? And with this question, I really like to think about light switches, okay? So who is the person that has the ability to turn that light on or off? It's usually an individual or a board or a commission that has some authority. This is also a place where we talk about power mapping. So Power mapping is the process of identifying who has influence over your targets, who do they listen to, and how can you reach them. And remember, the most obvious target isn't always the only one. Sometimes there are allies or influencers or stakeholders that actually matter more. So think about formal power, titles and positions, but also informal power. Who are community leaders or financial donors or trusted peers? That solid map is where you're going to focus your tactics on so you can have the biggest impact. And in this scenario, our targets are going to be the university president and the trustees. So we've identified our problem, we've set our goal, and now we know who has the power to turn that light switch on or off. It's the university president and the trustees. The next thing we want to focus on is who are our people? Who are our partners? Map your base. So these are the folks that are in your Courage Collective already. These are some allies that you've got in your pillar and some potential other partners. This is your ecosystem. So this is the point where you're going to start listing out, actually on this worksheet that we're going to drop in the chat, you're going to list out who are your core members, who are the allied organizations, and who are these unexpected partners. Again, power mapping is super helpful here. Who brings people? Who brings resources? Who brings credibility or skills that could kind of tip the balance here? And don't underestimate smaller or less formal partners in your area. Also, this is a really good place for us to think about our gaps. If your collective is missing representation from a key community, this is your point where you want to start building those bridges. So, in the scenario that we've talked about, your base is going to start with the people in your Courage Collective. Those are maybe faculty members or staff members or students that are super committed to protecting DEI. But you're also going to figure out who your other partners are. So you could look to student organizations like the Black Student Union or the Rainbow Alliance or the First Generation Student Group. You're going to want to look at faculty allies, like who are professors that have maybe already spoken publicly in defense of DEI. You want to look at community groups, local NAACP chapters, immigrant rights organizations like civic or interfaith leaders. This other place that I'm really excited about our ability to jump into is our labor partners. Does your campus have a workers union? Is there a graduate student association that you could partner with? And then lastly, we talked about unexpected allies. Are there maybe some local businesses that really rely on diverse student populations? Are there alumni who can exert some financial influence? Or is there actually a trustee who already sits on the board who is super empathetic and sympathetic to this cause in our fight for equity? So we've named our problem, we've set our goal, we've figured out who we need to target and who our people are. Now we've got to figure out what our tactics are. How are we going to move from a problem to a goal? This is where you're going to brainstorm some actions, and those actions should escalate. So you're going to start with things like petitions and public letters. If those don't work, we're going to move into teach-ins and solidarity campaigns. And if those don't work, we're going to move into direct action. Really good campaigns escalate over time. We want to start small, we want to build our momentum, and we always want to save our biggest actions for when we have the power and the people lined up to execute on them effectively. So we should always ask ourselves a couple of questions. Does this tactic help us move the decision maker? Does this tactic help us grow our base? Or does this tactic build our collective's capacity? Not every tactic is right for every moment, and your timing and your sequence really, really, really matter. The goal here is not just action for action's sake, but action to advance your strategy. So I'm going to walk us through a couple of examples about what this kind of escalation can look like. So you in this scenario might start by circulating a petition among students and alumni that just asks your university to publicly commit to DEI. I don't fish, so I don't really know what the metaphor is here, but like nobody caught your lure. So the next thing that we're going to do as we escalate is we're going to publish a petition with the students and alumni to call for that public commitment. We're going to sign an open letter with faculty and students on it. We're going to get it in the campus newspaper. We're going to ask alumni networks to amplify it. That's an escalation from a petition. Say that doesn't work. The next thing that you're going to do in your tactic escalation is to organize a campus teach-in. You're going to have students and faculty highlighting why DEI is so important, and you're going to invite the local press there. Say that doesn't work. We're then going to escalate even further. This is the time where you have alumni start to threaten to withhold donations. You have faculty threaten a grading slowdown. You've got community partners holding solidarity actions to show the university that their reputation is at risk. So just to reiterate, you want to start with tactics that can be escalated. Don't go so big at the beginning where you don't have another chance to escalate in a way that protects you and your collective. Okay, so we identified our problem, we've got our goal, we know who has the power to make that change, we know who's in community with us, and we've talked about our tactics. The next thing we want to do, if we could hop to the next slide, is figure out a timeline and figure out some milestones. So in phase one, you're going to do some research and build some support. So this is the part where you're gathering your intel, you're talking to your allies, you're drafting your power map, and you're aligning internally. So for me, when I think about like what does success look like here, it's that shared problem statement, it's a mapped decision maker, and it's commitments from initial partners. This is also a really good time before you go public to identify whatever risks and obstacles you all might face so you're not caught off guard later. And I know that we mentioned this before, but we're going to have a worksheet that's got this information there for you. So just know that there's a tool that comes with this as well. So phase two, that's when you go public. This is your public launch. You're going to roll your campaign out with that petition like we talked about, with that op-ed, with a launch event. Success here is all about visibility, getting more supporters, and your target starting to feel some pressure. Your launch sets the tone and lets your target know that you are serious. So think about how your launch is going to generate both energy, but also legitimacy. This third phase is that escalation phase we just mentioned. You're going to step up the pressure with rallies or teach-ins or coalition meetings, and then you're going to get to direct action. For me, success here is like the target is feeling the heat, you've got media attention, and more folks are joining you. And escalation should feel supernatural. All you're doing here is building from your earlier actions rather than some of this stuff coming out of nowhere. The goal is to raise the stakes in a way that grows your power while limiting risk. I'll say that again. Your goal here with escalation is to raise the stakes in a way that grows your power and limits your risk. The last part is phase four, my favorite part, and the part that every single person on this call is going to get to, and that is a win. We are going to win on our campaigns. The decision maker is going to take action, and then you're going to claim that win. What you're going to do after that, though, is honestly, to me, the most important part of this campaign. You want to keep the win committed to and honored. So success here looks like a public acknowledgement of the win, but a plan to monitor the follow-through and building momentum for your next campaign. Winning does not mean that the fight is over, and defending your win is oftentimes the longest phase. So I don't want you to leave this training without that like deeply internalized. Defending your win is oftentimes the longest phase in this process. So if we could jump to the next slide, just a couple of notes that I want folks to remember as they leave this training tonight. Campaign planning is all about clarity. You want clarity on your problem, clarity on your goal, clarity on your target, clarity on your people, and clarity on your tactics. So I really want to encourage each of the Courage Collectives to come together as a group, use these 5 questions to develop a campaign plan. And then the thing that we're really excited to do after No Kings is start to collect information about our pillars and connect folks. So we're really excited about that opportunity. Strong campaigns do not start with the biggest action, they start with the clearest plan. If you use this framework, your collective can build some campaigns to grow your power and to move your pillar to resist. Thank you all so much, and I'm excited to turn it back over to Nora.
Amazing. Thank you, Tom. I had to rip myself away from the Q&A section where folks have been doing my best to yeah, just answer some of the like slightly more straightforward like link sharing and different things that have come up here. So great. We're going to transition to a little bit of FAQ from what has happened so far. And I think actually, Carly, we can probably go ahead and take down the slides because and just show some faces a little bit bigger. Um, Okay, so folks, we've got about 10 minutes left on this call, which is great. That seems reasonably robust for Q&A. That said, we've been just watching the chat and the Q&A and kind of answering what we could along the way. And we're absolutely not going to get to everything, just to be very, open about that. But we're going to do our best to kind of speak to um, some of the best things that or not the, sorry, not the best things. I'm watching a lot at the same time. The most common things that have shown up or that we feel just capable of speaking to right now. And I did just pause the chat because somebody had just asked for the link to the campaign planning worksheet that covers some of what Tom just covered. So just drop that in the chat one more time. And we'll pop back on the chat in just a little bit. Okay, so Tom, Trisha, let's talk some big topics here. Um, Trisha, on the Courage Collectives and Pillars front, I think folks have been bringing up a few different things. I think, in some cases it's like some of us could still use more clarity on like, what does it mean to think about a pillar exactly? Or what if I feel like I'm not part of any pillars? A lot of people, for what it's worth, are also saying like, hey, I've got this idea and I'm really ready to share it. Um, and then also, I think there's been a little bit of, Tom, maybe this goes to your piece a little bit, some questions about like maybe either intimidation with the scale of like taking on one of these campaigns or a sense of like, is there something more bite size I can do? So I'm doing something that I do sometimes problematically in FAQ, which is I smash 6 questions together. But I guess what I'm wondering is, can we speak a little bit to how to think about identifying a sense of pillar? And also, if you like really don't feel like that is a relevant framework, what might make sense as a different option? I'm assuming it's like maybe just do a different form of organizing. Not everybody has to do courage collectives. But Trish, if you want to speak to that a little bit, and then Tom, if you want to speak maybe to the sort of like intimidation level around campaign stuff. Trisha, maybe you have thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I'll start, I guess, which is that one, I'll say that Courage Collective might not be for everyone, and like the pillars frame might not be the thing that you really engage with. But I will say that like everybody fits into a pillar because everybody buys something. That makes you a consumer. You're in the business pillar. Most of us go to the doctor, or if we don't go to the doctor, it's because of like a real reason, and we're all patients, right? We're in the healthcare pillar. Most of us have gone to some sort of school. We are alumni of an elementary school, a high school, maybe a college, a university, a training program. We're in an education pillar. There are so many ways to think about the ways like that you can fit into everything. So it might be that you're in a pillar because of your job or because of like your faith. Maybe you go to an institution like a something that's spiritual that you could belong to. There's so many ways that we belong just to society. And if you can think about the different ways that like you belong to society, the ways that you relate to other people, the way you relate to businesses and other like institutions in your town and your community, those are ways to start thinking about the pillars that can really like might not feel very obvious right now, but like we really are just all interconnected and all relating to all of the pillars all of the time. And once you start to think about it, it's harder to stop seeing it. Like you'll see it everywhere.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add to that, Trisha, is this might be an opportunity for folks to do a bit of a power map on themselves. So you could do some self-analysis of how do you spend your time? Where do you spend your time? How do you spend your money? Who do you listen to? And when you go through that process of doing a bit of a power map on yourself, you're gonna, like Trisha said, illuminate some of the places and spaces where you actually are a member of a pillar, which might not seem super relevant or in existence right now. I've seen a couple of folks ask questions about, I live in a rural community, like what does this look like for me? I think that kind of universally applies to folks. As a member of a rural community, my mom lives in a rather small town. She's a member of an indivisible group. She did the Solidarity and Action Sign project with a couple of other folks in her Courage Collective. And what happened based on that was individuals started identifying different places and spaces where they too could take those solidarity and action signs to put up in their gyms or their high school locker rooms or their churches or their if you're a UU or an atheist or a humanist or a pagan or a Wiccan, like there are places and spaces where all of us occupy that are opportunities for us to build some pillar identities and to kind of push for places and spaces where democracy can be both preserved, protected, but also expanded. So I just really would encourage folks to do a bit of a self-analysis. How do you spend your time? Who do you listen to? Where do you get your information from? And then how can you look at those institutions as opportunities to uh, uh, practice some non-compliance work against this regime?
Great. Thank you both so much for that. So something that is a little bit on this topic, but maybe more in kind of like the structural nuts and bolts. Trisha, I know you spoke to this, but if you could just reiterate, I think some folks wanted clarity on just like what is intended to be the kind of differentiation or possibly the overlap between like I have no affiliation, but I'm going to start a Courage Collective, or I'm part of an indivisible group, but I'm interested in doing Pillars work. If you could reiterate some of that a little bit, that would help.
Sure.
Somebody
So
asked about the possibility of fragmentation. I think we all want to be clear that's not the intention. It's more about connecting people who are ready and interested in working on things together. But yeah.
Yeah, completely. And so I think maybe a helpful place to start is just like, what is an indivisible group and how is that different than a courage collective? So an indivisible group, for the most part, are people that are organizing together because they live in the same place, right? They live in the same town, they live in the same county, they might all live in the same state. And that's the primary reason that they're organizing together. And they're also probably they might be doing pillars organizing, but they're probably doing a lot of other things as well. They might be doing electoral work, they might be doing local work, they might be pushing their member of Congress, doing a lot of different things. Courage collectives, the main reason that you're picking the people you want to organize within a courage collective is because they share a pillar identity with you. So that might mean that they live in the same place as you, but it might not mean that as well. So maybe you live in a college town and a lot of people are all like faculty of that university and you guys want to work together on a courage collective. In that case, you live in the same place, you can organize in person. But like used another example, maybe you went to law school with a bunch of people. Now you live in different places, but want to be pushing your law school to not comply with Trump's like crazy compacts and his like demands of universities. Then you would like not be in the same place, you'd be organizing virtually. So that's kind of the difference is like how you choose the people you organize with is really the difference between the two. And if you're already in an indivisible group and it makes sense because like a lot of your members are part of the same pillar and want to organize together, your indivisible group can start a working group that is a courage collective. We'd recommend that you registered as a courage collective so you can like access support from like Tom and me and everyone else that's working on this. But it doesn't have to be a different thing. But also, if you are like, it actually doesn't make sense for my indivisible group to be the same place that I am doing my pillar organizing because not a lot of people share my pillar identity. I know other people in other places that do that I could organize with. You certainly can do both. And so it's not a choice of having to pick one or the other. And there are ways that they can be collapsing together. And also, there are ways that if you're not in an indivisible group and you're wondering why I'm talking so much about that, but you're really interested in a courage collective, you don't need to be in an indivisible group to start a courage collective. That can be a thing that you do separately. This is a really flexible program. Like I said before, there's no one size fits all approach to it. And so whatever keeps you in the work and like gets you excited about doing pillars advocacy is the right route for you to go here.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you for recapping that. And folks, if you ever just like want some reminders, the website links that are kind of going to be the landing page for Courage Collectives, I think should articulate some of this. And don't worry, we'll post all the actually, you know what? Liz, who's on the back end, would you mind just while the chat is paused, just starting to redrop all of the links, that we've said with their captions and things, just so they're showing back up from everything we've done so far as we keep doing the Q&A. And then we'll maybe pop the chat back on towards the end again. Okay. One thing that I'm going to throw a quick answer in about, and then maybe pass to you, Tom, to say some more about, since this is an area that you work in a lot. So, folks, a lot of people were starting to bring questions. This is actually especially for those of you who like maybe so you hosted a gathering, you hosted a second gathering, maybe you kept speaking after that. I feel like somebody, oh yeah, the person who was saying I started my group, it ballooned to 60 people, but it's been difficult to keep people motivated and in action. We've got newbies, we've got experienced folks. How do we kind of just keep the momentum going? Other questions regarding like, how do I, maybe I need to recruit more people, or how do I get press? How do I keep people engaged? All of these would kind of fall, I think, under the general category of like core organizing basics of like doing local community organizing or social change organizing, however you kind of want to label it. For what it's worth, this is something that we are constantly dealing with in the indivisible space, and working as best we can to support local groups in the skills around. If you join or you want to form your own local indivisible group, we have this whole kind of like new leader kind of training pathway and other training resources. And this is where I'm going to pass the mic to you, Tom, if you want to speak to that at all. We can't get into all those topics tonight, but we can tell you there might be other spaces where you could get that.
Yeah, yeah. So a couple of quick notes there. In the follow-up email that we are going to send to you, there's going to be some resources that you can act on right away about how do you start a group, what does recruitment look like, how do you kind of set up a decision-making framework for your group. When it comes to recruitment, I really do just kind of harken back to that, like doing a power map on yourself and thinking through the people that you listen to, that you're in community with, that might share that pillar identity with you. That's the best first place to start. And then once you get those folks into your Courage Collective, you might have already exhausted your own network. So the thing that you kind of flip to once you've got your Courage Collective established is coaching your other Courage Collective members to reach out to their network. I really like to think about this as like a snowball that's going down a mountain and it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. I might have 15 folks in my network that I share a pillar identity with, but if I bring those 15 folks in, they have 15 people in their network. And I don't do math in public, so I think that that's probably over 200 people that could then join your Courage Collective after that. We really want to think about snowballing our efforts. If you do decide that you want to join Indivisible as a group, we have a litany of resources that you can run through. We've got a 4-part training series that Leah and Ezra hop into, and it's a really good kind of 101 fundamental space. And we'll make sure to include that information in the follow-up. But I do just want to like leave you all with this, like you have so much power, and the network and the individuals that you are in relationship with are the lowest hanging fruit for you to get your Courage Collective launched. So don't diminish the power that you currently have by thinking about like, I don't have 60 people that I can bring together. If you've got 3 other people that are just as angry and just as frustrated and just as riled up to do something, that is the perfect place to start. One other person. That's all you need to be a collective. A collective is 2 plus. So if you've got one other person that is just as fired up as you, you've got your Courage Collective. And we'll provide you with some resources, support, and training to grow that Courage Collective moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tom. So, folks, we are coming up on, well, past the end of the hour that we were going to cover this in. I know there's lots of things that we haven't spoken to so far. I'm going to offer a couple of things in the chat. So, the 1 million rising at nokings.org email will be open for about another week. And then after that, that's kind of like the best place to send questions that maybe you didn't get answered tonight. I do, though, also want to say, if you're somebody who's been asking specifically about your upcoming No Kings event, like, hey, I had issues getting it on the map, or I've got this other question. Well, first of all, if you're just trying to attend a No Kings event, the best way to get questions answered is to reach out to the people who are organizing that local one, which you can do by RSVPing on Mobilize and then using the contact event organizer button in that. But if you're hosting one and you have questions, we want to direct you to host at nokings.org. That they're getting a lot in there, and you will get an auto reply first, but they triage questions based on what's not answered in the auto reply. So that's a place. And then if you have questions about, maybe you're thinking about the Courage Collective stuff, you want to come back to it, you're not totally sure. We have a new place, which is pillars at indivisible.org for questions about Courage Collectives and pillars organizing. So a couple things I wanted to leave there. And then I just want to speak very briefly as we're closing because some folks had asked, like, hey, I just want a little bit more clarity on like the difference between all of these things. This feels kind of like, again, a boring like infrastructure thing to end on. So maybe Trisha, Tom, think of something inspiring to say at the end. No pressure. So yeah, so just to reiterate, No Kings, huge coalition effort. We're talking big national organizations, we're talking smaller local organizations, we're talking people who don't have affiliation but are doing a lot of work. Okay. 1 Million Rising was designed as like a short-term temporary training and action program. The trainings that, a lot of you attended, and then the gatherings that folks did, and then the campaigns that led into, to try to channel energy from those 5 million folks in the streets on No Kings. Again, that was a coalition effort. There were a number of folks who helped recruit for it, gave ideas to it, and then Indivisible kind of held down some of the, yeah, just like the logistics, the infrastructure, the some of that other execution pieces. And then, but like, I think some people were saying, like, why is it ending? It would like, we didn't want to start 1 Million Rising as like a whole nother organization to have to like worry about. It's more of like a program that folks came together around because it felt like a really worthwhile thing to do, in the moment that it was. And it's not like it's going away exactly. It's a temporary thing that's folding into the next phases of like broad, progressive ecosystem movement, organizing stuff like what's coming up with No Kings, these other campaigns that are still going, and probably a bunch of other stuff that we're all gonna have to do, October 19th and onward. So I know it can be a little funny to just like make sense of those pieces. But at the end of the day, it's all just like people doing their best to be like, wow, how can we get folks to be powerful together and take action together? Let's try this. So, and with that, Tom, Trisha, any words of wisdom you want to end us on?
Yeah, I mean, at every step, I want y'all to remember that campaigns are how we turn our values into real, tangible change. When we build with clarity and we build with strategy, we do not just fight back, we show people what a thriving democracy can look like. And each collective has the power to spark change in your pillar and to inspire other folks to join you. So together we can resist, we can win, and we can build the future that our communities deserve. So I'm just incredibly grateful for all of you. And I know that we are in this fight together, and know that you are not alone. We are all here fighting alongside one another to make sure that our democracy doesn't just survive, but it thrives. So thank you all so much.
Let's
I
go.
can't say it better than
Trisha,
that.
what's up with what's that?
I can't say it better than that. I think we should just end there. Go, Tom.
Okay. All right. Well, cheers to everybody. Folks, we want to say thank you so much. The action you've taken over the past little bit is part of what's flowing us forward to what we're going to need continue needing to do to protect our people. Um, okay, that's it. Thank you all. Have a great night.